Good evening and welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to another exciting session of Khula Growth Club. We seem to be experiencing some minor technical challenges, but in case you are wondering if you are at the right place or not, this would be the banner you would have seen to tell you that you're in the right place. So we are grateful to have you this evening. While you join in on the call, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, perhaps a little bit about your business and what area of business you're in, and which area you're joining the call from. So where in the country, which town, which city, which region are you joining the call from? Just to get everybody used to making use of the chat box. So please make use of the chat box. So just tell us a little bit about yourself, the name of your company, perhaps about a little bit about your industry, so that we can kick off the call. For those of you joining us for the first time, welcome, and we have some simple rules to the call. We do ask that you please keep your mic and your video off for the first 60 minutes of the call. You will get another opportunity to switch on your mic later on during the course of the call to ask your questions and to our speaker this evening. If ultimately you need to send something, you're welcome to send it to me. It's not Hyper Group this evening, it's Vuyisa Kabaka. You're welcome to inbox me and send me a message if you have any particular questions. But at the same time, you are quite free to always be asking questions on the chat box and again, using the chat box to write your notes, using the chat box to ask questions and to direct questions to our speakers this evening. And later on, you'll be welcome to leave your questions on the chat box and or to speak directly to the speakers to ask questions. If you have any particular things that you'd like to find out more about, please feel free to send it to webinars@smtax.co.za, where the team will be able to take your questions, direct them the right way, and respond and come back with a response to your questions. Please note that this particular session has been recorded, and we're also live streaming it to YouTube and to Facebook. So again, it will be put out there. Just in case we do have any members of the media joining us this evening, please note that this session is a closed session, fully off the record, but you are more than welcome if you'd like to have questions directed to Yolelwa or to Bongiwe. We can direct those questions directly. And again, you too are welcome to send through those media questions to webinars@smtax.co.za. This evening's session, we have a very simple program that we're looking forward to sharing with you. We've just gone through the rules. And again, we still welcome you to share with us where you're from, what business you run, which region in the country you're in, and again, what you're hoping to achieve out of this particular session. As per usual, we're going to repeat the objective of these calls in terms of the two main outcomes that we hope to achieve as a result or through these calls. And we'll do a very quick introduction for you to what the Khula Growth Club community is all about. And then we'll hand it over to thank our speakers and get a quick synopsis of insights from the team at SMTax, one of our sponsors this evening. And then we'll then hand it over to our guest speaker, which I'm sure is a person that many of you have joined us for this evening. And this evening, Yolelwa Sikunyana will be speaking specifically around people do business with people with contracts and what that means and how you can adopt that principle to your own business as well. We'll then open it up for questions in the last bit. But like I said, throughout the session, you are more than welcome to write your questions in the chat box, and we'll be monitoring those questions to make sure that in the flow of conversation that we can respond to them. And then we'll tell you about a little bit about the exciting process we're following in August and the many kind of opportunities for Women's Month that we'll be following as a theme going on to next month. As mentioned earlier, we have a key focus with these sessions, and these objectives are really very simple. They're really two. The first one is to convene for new possibilities. We all know that we're going through a very difficult time, not only because of the public health care pandemic, COVID-19, but also a lot of difficult times in the economy with ever-changing times. So we've particularly convened these sessions to discuss, again, new approaches, learning from old ways, improving our process, and getting better as we move forward in the future. Again, we are here to possibly learn about new ideas and fresh perspectives. In this case, in the legal context, and this is why we've invited Yolelwa to address us this evening, again, to unmask some of these things and to demystify some of the legal things that perhaps sometimes hold us a victim to our own failures and again, limit our success as business owners. The second reason why we are here this evening is ultimately to build a peer support network. Again, the intention is to grow this with the support of our sponsors and our partners. Again, you too, if your company or your organization would be interested in participating and getting involved in supporting this initiative, you're welcome to reach out to us. It is an open platform for other brands and other partners to join in to supporting the growth of this particular community. And lastly is to encourage our commitment to economic participation. Again, through these collaborative kind of platforms, we want to encourage people to come out and really enjoy the benefit of participating in the economy, especially during these difficult times. So as we've said, we would love to tell you a little bit more about the Khula Growth Network. The Khula Growth Club is an entrepreneur community like no other. It's dedicated to small business owners who are fully committed to their business growth, their personal development, knowledge exchange, and long-term success. The community has been established as a member benefit community with a focus on tangible value creation, access to affordable business services, and non-partisan commitment to SME advocacy. Again, we're here to drive business growth is at the core of the community. This is not a political party, but this is not a gathering, a prayer session. This is a session of entrepreneurs helping other entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs connecting with each other in business. And this is why your opportunity is here and now. Tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your business, where you are operating your business from. Perhaps someone on the wall will recognize the opportunity to exchange and connect with you after this call, and you can go on to continue to go and do business together. So that's primarily the key idea, and we're trying to facilitate this along with also delivering knowledge exchange, delivering thought leadership, delivering insights, and tangible practical things that can go a long way in helping you improve the quality of your business. And again, to do this, we are calling on all the people joining us this evening to help us improve the offering that Khula Growth Club has available. And to this effect, we want to encourage all the attendees this evening and anybody who's watching this on Facebook to take our 3-minute survey. Feel free at any time to take screenshots of the entire session as it's delivered, but that short code will take you through to our very short 3-minute survey that is designed to assist us improve the quality of what we do in this process. And with that in mind, again, we want to thank our partners and our sponsors that again have made this possible. Thank you to my team at Hyber Group for the effort and support that goes into making sure that this initiative takes place every 2 weeks. Thank you to, again, the wonderful team from SM Tax. And again, we work very well with Bongi and Bukhule, Sivenati, and the rest of the team at SM Tax. And again, thank you again, guys, for the amazing support in making sure that these things get done and the support for entrepreneurs is there. Again, this month, it's been quite interesting. SM Tax has brought on someone I've known for quite some time, for many years, Ubongiwe Beja, to head up the Startup Services Department at SM Tax. And Ubongi has taken to this like a duck on water. We've got some exciting initiatives that we'll be launching. We've got a great kind of working process. So she's literally taken to the road with a lot of intent, with a lot of process. And again, Ubongi is here to service you guys. Many of the people on this call are possibly clients of SM Tax, and you're already familiar with it. So perhaps you now see the face of the new Startup Services and she's a wonderful new asset to SM Tax. And again, with that in mind, I want to now hand over to Ubongi to talk to us about some of the SM Tax insights that they've pulled together for this particular presentation and for this particular call, so that many of you guys can learn from the lessons that they have. Bongi, is your mic on?
Yes, yes.
Awesome. I can hear you as well. So welcome, Bongi. Over to you.
Thank you, Vu. I truly appreciate it. And welcome everybody to the Khula Growth Club webinar tonight. The topic is quite interesting around contracts and legal matters. And we've got quite a good expert on the matter, Uyoli, who will share more. But I think my job today is just to share a little bit more about what we do at SM Tax and what we see, just to set the scene of what startups and entrepreneurs face when it comes to legal matters. By profession, I'm a chartered development finance analyst. And so my first couple of slides are going to be around some statistics rather that I think we need to engage on. Okay, so my first slide there, I don't mind if you just, do all the animation. Great. So last month in June, the GEM SA report was published, and this is the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor for South Africa. And whilst it is a sample of South African entrepreneurs and not the entire population, it does indicate for us what's happening in South Africa. So what's happening here is that you'll see that for South Africa's adult population that owns businesses, there are 3.5% of them that own businesses that have got more than 3.5 years in operation. That 42 months is exactly 3.5 years, meaning that, you know, the business is established and likely to continue. This rate is so important for governments across Africa to know, just so that it indicates whether entrepreneurship will contribute to the economic growth. And I think we can all relate, particularly because we've got this COVID-19 pandemic. We'd really like to see more entrepreneurs. We'd like to see more youth and women owning businesses, but we want to see businesses that last longer than 12 months. So the scary statistic here is that the business discontinuous rate is 4.9%. What is that? The adult population of South Africa, 4.9% of them open businesses, but they shut down within 12 months. That means that there are more businesses that are being closed than there are being started. And this is quite scary in terms of this relationship. What we want, we'd like the number in the blue box to be the blue bubble rather, to be bigger than the companies that open and don't last 12 months. Now, the same group of businesses were surveyed and asked, why is it that your companies close up within 12 months? And the two biggest reasons is the business is not profitable or there's problems getting finance. And so if you go to my next slide, Vu, this both scares me and excites me. It scares me because you really want entrepreneurship and the startup or SMME development in South Africa to start contributing meaningfully to economic growth. We need it, not with the unemployment rate where it is in South Africa. You really want new businesses. You want people to be employed. You want people to be self-employed. But it also excites me. It excites me as the chief executive of Startup Services because it almost quantifies why we exist. You know, key SME challenges, no matter what study you look at, it's always access to finance, access to opportunities. You know, finance is always at the core. Cost of doing business is also another challenge that SMEs face. But the reason behind it, because we have poor financial and risk planning often as entrepreneurs, and we lack financial controls. And this is where SM Tax's offering is really focused on. We are a tax, accounting, and advisory firm, and we help companies that are are either at the startup phase where you've got a business idea and you'd like to formalize, or you're even in that growth trajectory and you need somebody to get your books in order, being the tax side of things, or even your accounting and bookkeeping. But tonight, because we're focusing on the legal side of things, I really want to focus and zone in on the risk planning aspect. And if I can just go through some of the things that we see at SM Tax. Yes, you can go to the next slide. Is here are the key insights. So when we engage with our entrepreneurs at SM Tax and we see around legal risks, what the key issues are, I've grouped them into three main legal risks. There's company shareholder agreements where, when the directors part ways, when things don't work out as planned, if that's not outlined in that shareholder agreement, it gets really, really tough to decide whose share goes where and how do you manage that as an organization without that key man or key person imposing a risk to the organization. We've even had the sad situation where one of the directors passes away and their share is linked to their family, and their family struggles to get the share of the deceased director because in the shareholder agreement it wasn't outlined properly how that will happen. The second block there is around corporate agreements with SMEs, and I think this is the thing that I'd really like Yolelwa to share as well in terms of insight, because you start your business, you get to a point where you break even, and then there comes a time, that exciting time, where you get that first corporate deal, and they want to do business with your organization. But what happens is that the templates that are out there are usually written to favor the company, the large corporate, and not the SME. I'll give you an example. Sometimes the payment terms there will tell you that payment will only happen 90 days after the service you've provided. And as an SME, can your cash flow projections or even your business survive that kind of cash, where you don't have the cash flow within 90 days after you service? So you get excited when you get that contract, but if you don't read those clauses on payment terms, you might find yourself really strapped for some time if you don't challenge the corporate or the person that you're dealing with to change the clause to suit your business. Also look at pricing in your contracts, because that's another one where they trip us up. For SMMEs, it's always skewed to the large corporates. And so I really think we need to take cognizant of the legal risks that you need to manage as an SME. And last but not least is employee share incentives. You get to a point as an SME, you've got really good people on your team, you want to give them shares, but now how do you actually do that? Because we all know people come and go. Employees don't always stay. And so what's the cost of implementing such agreements? How do you structure those things? And how do you de-risk the company when those employees leave? Because if you gave them shares and they leave and you haven't properly outlined the employee share agreement, you could find yourself losing a share of your own business that you built to an employee that only stayed for a short time with your organization. So these are some of the things we see at SM Tax, but really our focus as an organization is to help you thrive. And my last slide, when Vu shows it in a minute, really summarizes that. We are here to work together with the entrepreneurs to unlock that shared value. And so if any of you are already SM Tax clients, I'm really excited to have you here so you can hear more about legal risks. And if this is the first time you're hearing about SM Tax and you are running a business, please do take the time to visit our website. It's www.smtax.co.za. And during this call, I'll also just pop my email address because as the Chief Executive of Startup Services, I'm really, really passionate about helping you thrive in your business. And that's really all I had to share tonight. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bongi. Thanks. And you guys, you're off to a rocking start, my sister. So please, strength to you and your team. Hopefully, again, we'll only continue to hear nothing but the best things coming out of your particular space at SM Tax. Again, please feel free to use the chat box to engage with Bongi. She's going to be on the call for the duration of the call. Again, to ask questions, get clarity. Again, anything related to your accounting, your tax, fundraising. If you're fundraising, they help with fundraising. And soon, I think if we all have our way, Ubongi, no Yolelwa, will meet to make things happen that even by extension, legal services can be purchased virtually via the SM Tax platform. So thanks for that, Bongi. And again, looking forward to these sessions as we move forward. Now, this evening, we literally are here because of one person. I don't even recall how I met you, yours. I'm trying to remember what was the context of how we met. Normally, that's quite clear in my mind. You must remind me. But Yolelwa is an entrepreneur and practicing attorney with over 15 years of legal experience. Her interest is entrenched within the entrepreneurship, development, and legal education. She is the founder of Sikunyana Inc. Attorneys, a firm based in Midrand, founded on the principles that it must create momentous impact in the provision of legal services with a creative mind. Now, again, for me, our business certainly makes use of Yolelwa services. Now, if those of you know me a little bit better on this call, will know that I'm not the easiest person to get along with. So I send messages at odd hours of the day and the night, and you are in danger if I pay service fees, because my money must work for me. But I must say, like a true consummate professional, Ubongi is always there for my needs, and is always supportive and responsive, and provides a great service for our company. She's also an author. She's self-published a legal book to support SMEs. So again, I'm sure she'll touch it on a little bit during the course of the presentation. But for me, I'm just hanging out with her. It's always so much fun because it's such an education in legal kind of context and policy and legislation. So it's always a great pleasure engaging and just being in interaction with Yolelwa. So Yoli, thank you for making the time for all of us. We truly are appreciative. So again, those of you who are watching this on YouTube, on Facebook, you're welcome to leave comments on the chat section on the SM Tax Facebook page, and we'll pick them up. But you're also welcome to leave, if you're on the call with us, leave your questions on the chat box, and then we'll pick it up from there. Yoli, is your mic on? Are you ready?
Yes, my mic is on.
Awesome. So looking forward to hearing some of your thoughts. I know you've prepared a presentation and you'll unpack a few kind of thoughts. So I'll also be on standby.
Okay, excellent. Good evening to everyone, and thanks Vu and SM Tax for hosting me tonight. And in an overview of matters really that concern SMEs around legal issues, I've placed around 4 issues, and these are literally frameworks that SMEs can work around to safeguard their investments. Because if we do business with people. But how do we make sure that those investments that we make to people are actually taking place the way we had intended to? So the whole idea is for us to just touch on those issues that are troubling SMEs. And just like Bongi said, we also run some sort of a research and a poll around issues that are painful for entrepreneurs in the legal space. So hopefully we're gonna cover some of them, and I will encourage everyone to just drop in their comments and questions in the chat section, so that if there's too much pain in those areas, we can refocus on trying to talk about them more. Okay, so we can move then to the presentation. Well, the background around what we've picked up with SMEs that are actually painful is that the contracts themselves are complex. The regulation in South Africa, we've got just in excess of 1.5 legislation and regulations And you ask yourself as a small business, how do you manage to get hold of all that legislation that is applicable in your business? And as such, because there is that external compliance, there needs to be legal and compliance inside the small business. And the small business, because they are not legal experts, in most of the time, they don't afford to hire lawyers, but then how is it that they can comply? So our legal education is literally based around supporting them to say, how can you incorporate this legal and compliance in your business? So these challenges, they are likely to affect the operations of the business, whether through disputes that arise externally or non-compliance that could arise internally. So our idea is that there should be awareness, and these obligations should be communicated at least to entrepreneurs as to how they can manage them. And of course, when you are having a contract, it's better to get someone to review it for you before you can sign. And I always say that the principle that I have is that you can spend 10,000 today to save yourself 1 million tomorrow. And that is the approach that we are actually suggesting.
Please repeat that, boy. Please, Yoli, repeat that loud.
So the principle that we are selling is that, spend 10,000 today and avoid a loss of 1 million tomorrow. So we actually preach a proactive approach, rather seek advice than seek a fire extinguisher, so to speak. All right, so all things contracts, we know this is a pain for all SMEs, and particularly because we've got a risk. Our main risk is that we don't render services on our own all the time. So in certain situations, you're gonna have to deal with other people, and those people you're gonna have to sign contracts with. And the issue now arises around obligations. What are the obligations that I have as the party that has sought to invite another party to do business with me? And that person that I'm doing business with, do they understand their own obligations? And what happens if they don't comply with those obligations? And we have zoomed in, particularly in this period of COVID, around what we call the force majeure clause, which is the clause that is mostly applicable now because everyone has been affected by the pandemic. So the question is, if you've got obligations to perform, how do you get to suspend them during the pandemic? Do you just sit and say everyone knows that is a pandemic, and as such, I'm not going to do anything, I'm not going to pay my rent? Or do you initiate a negotiation based on the contract? So the principle around contracts is that they are only enforceable or binding on people that have signed them. So you need to approach that person that you've signed a contract with, and then you need to negotiate to accommodate the impossibility. Because around this period, some people have had challenges regarding their performance. So the contract itself will tell you that if you don't perform, this is what will happen. So most entrepreneurs are stuck in saying, but I've approached my landlord and my landlord is not cooperative. What is it that I need to do? So it is the first thing when there is a dispute or when there is a dilemma for entrepreneurs to go to the contract. So when the courts are reviewing contract, they are unlikely to apply common law first without looking at what did the parties agree. So when we talk about contractual risk management, we're talking exactly about that, to say that the contract that you have concluded, do you understand what it says to you? Do you understand the obligations it brings? And if something goes wrong, do you understand what needs to be done? And the example around how contracts operate is more like relationships. In the beginning, everyone is happy. We are walking in the park, but nobody knows the day we fight whether I'm gonna flight or I'm gonna fight. So the contract makes it certain for parties to understand that when a dispute arises, this is how we intend to resolve it. So which means that contracts play a certain role, which makes the investment of a business to be secured because you already know. So the terms that are in the contract are of critical importance because then this is where the disputes are likely to arise. Whilst we understand that there are obligations and people must comply with the obligations, it happens in many instances that parties are unable to perform for various reasons. And that is where now liability comes into play, to say that this is one thing you've agreed to, but on the next thing, you have not done 1, 2, 3. So if the contract is prescriptive on how you need to resolve the dispute, unfortunately, there is no other way that you can resolve the dispute. So one of the painful matters for SMEs is that they conclude contracts that are subject to arbitration. So just to explain a bit, arbitration is an alternative dispute mechanism that is used instead of litigation or as an alternative to litigation. But in South Africa, we've got a foundation for arbitration. So arbitration is a bit expensive. So it's not a bit expensive, it's expensive. In a day, you can pay up to about 45,000 just for your matter to be heard on arbitration. But it's quicker and it's confidential and private. So the issues that are surrounding SMEs being capable of understanding their legal agreements and how to negotiate them is to avoid those pitfalls. There is no need for a small business to agree to an arbitration clause, for instance. An SME, we always encourage that they would rather go for a mediation process initially, to say that CEOs or executives of the particular companies, they need to agree on how to resolve the dispute and attempt to resolve the dispute. And we suggest, of course, that the ultimate should be the courts, because remember, the courts are funded by the Department of Justice, whilst the Arbitration Foundation is funded individually. So those fees are paid directly by the parties that are in dispute. So that is another thing that is critical, that when you sign a contract, you just need to make sure you understand the difference between arbitration and litigation. The other thing that is of critical importance is what we call an escape clause. This escape clause, alternatively, a termination for convenience, is a clause that is killing small businesses currently. What happens with this clause, it suggests that any party in the contract that wants to terminate for no reason, they may give the other party a notice, and for a certain period, it can say 30 days or 60 days. But the issue or the bummer about it is that if you have concluded a contract for 3 years, and you've certainly invested in performing that contract, you've got staff, you've got equipment that you've bought. When you have that clause in your contract, it would happen that that company that has hired you, they can bring someone new, and that someone can just read your terms, and they would say, you know what, thank you for being our supplier for the past 3 years, but thank you very much. We are exercising our right in terms of clause so and so, being the escape clause, and we thank you. You are now released, and you find out you still owe funding, you still owe other suppliers. So this is what has been topping our disputes between 2019 and 2020 around SMEs not being aware, of escape clauses. So those are the things that around those clauses I would select specifically, that please pay attention into reading the terms of the contract. We can skip through. So whilst we are on these key issues, the other challenge that we have observed that brings some pain for SMEs is around the compliance in terms of the Companies Act. Of course, that is governance. So like Bongi said initially, there is a rise in disputes around shareholders' agreements. Because parties, when they start a business together, is either they are friends or they know each other from somewhere. but the relationship is good usually when they start. But as time goes on and the business grows, there are complications. And because these are friends, they never saw this as a risk. They don't conclude shareholders agreements. And in the end, when disputes arise, nobody knows, what's going to happen. So Bangi made an example, which is very common now during COVID, is that one director or one shareholder would pass away, and the family, of course, would go to the remaining shareholders seeking, some kind of asset. And, there won't be a document that states exactly how the shares are going to be disposed of in the event of death. And that has created so many problems, because one of the important things around shareholders agreement is that there needs to be a clear provision in the agreement as to how you dispose of the shares. And there are other issues around shareholding agreements that is linked directly sometimes to the BE transactions, where parties have concluded BE transactions, and yet the entire agreement is not specific in terms of the disposal of shares. So if I change my mind tomorrow and I start my company, I want to leave the BE deal, what do I do with my shares? So because of the lack of those provisions, you find that now parties are taking each other for litigation on issues that could have been provisioned for in those legal instruments. So that is important. And when you draft a shareholders agreement, it's a recommendation that you also draft the MOI, being the Memorandum of Incorporation, simultaneously. So the Memorandum of Incorporation is a public document, so anyone can view it from CIPC. However, it directs how the company is run. So how many times we'll have board meetings, and what are the quorum issues, and all those things, but anyone can view that. So shareholding agreement protects what you cannot put into the MOI, because the MOI is a public document, so you can rather provide for the more confidential issues on the shareholding. But disputes, of course, arise mainly around disposal of shares, because I want to know, if I leave the company, how much are my shares worth? And usually those are the disputes that never get answered. So in the Companies Act, which changes and gets amendments each and every day, there is certain specific sections that deal with liability of directors. And also we found out that other SMEs are serving on certain boards, except their companies. And in these boards, they don't necessarily have insurance for their liability. And what usually happens is that sometimes when you serve on a board, they give you a pack on the night before, and you haven't had an opportunity to read it. And when you get there, they say, let's vote. And if you sit on the board, you need to be in a position to then say, you're waiving your right to vote because of 1, 2, 3, or you're voting. So most businesses, small businesses, owners that serve on these boards, they actually vote, and they vote for things that they did not process. And these liabilities are exactly the same as they are for your company. So we also just, cautioning people that when you serve on these boards, just be careful on what you need to do. So we've already covered the issue of Memorandum of Incorporation. So there is an issue specifically that is outlined in the Companies Act, and this involves incidental profits. What we call incidental profits is when the director of the company actually moonlights, So instead, remember, the company was incorporated by you, but you are employed by the company. So most directors think just because I'm the director, I can do as I please. They go and moonlight and make incidental profits at the expense of the company. So the company would be ailing financially, but the director will be prospering financially. So there is no balance, but the act is specific that directors are actually prohibited from doing that. And those are the things that have come to our attention in this particular year around disputes that we've dealt with. Now, this is mainly the external, we could say it's an external risk, because for a company to be dragged, you know, in litigation, someone must drag it, unless they decide to sue somebody. So what we have picked up is that when small businesses receive letters of demand, they actually don't pay attention. You know, they don't ask for advice. They think, you know, the letter of demand is going to go away. But in essence, a letter of demand is more like commencing an intention that somebody has that they will litigate at some point. So when SMEs receive letters of demand, most of the time, they think that, no, you know what, it's not summons, so we don't need to attend to it. But they miss an opportunity to negotiate that dispute, and therefore saving a lot of costs. And maybe even the letter of demand, there is some inaccuracies around the demand that the entrepreneur could have resolved. So in essence, then that escalates to a litigation process. And once a litigation process starts, and it turns out that you were in the wrong, or you could have prevented that, then there are issues that are around costs, to say that you didn't have a defense, you've lost. So, you know, there's a term that says, you know, the costs, they follow the cause. So whoever who has lost, basically, or who has taken whoever in court and lost, they will be responsible for costs. So SMEs do not necessarily afford litigation. And it is my personal mantra that if SMEs can avoid litigation, they should avoid it at all costs, because it costs money, it wastes time, and there is a potential that those disputes will take about 2 to 3 years, looking at the roles of courts these days. So why would I say small businesses should avoid courts if I'm a lawyer and I'm actually litigating? The issues around small businesses is that whilst they do have rights, they don't have the financial muscles. And I will encourage people to look around tribunals and councils that can resolve disputes without making payments, you know, like courts. One of them that I would like entrepreneurs to look into is the Companies Tribunal. So the Companies Tribunal is established in terms of the Companies Act, and it operates under DTI. It has every dispute that has to do with directorship, names, you know, all those disputes that you have in the company. And the good thing is that they've got a status of giving an order which can be enforced in High Court. And it costs you an administrative fee of less than 10 rands or something like that. So it's important for entrepreneurs to know what are the other dispute resolution spaces that we have. The most critical thing, of course, around managing litigation is the implications of judgments taken against business owners. And why I want you to pay attention to this is that if you sign a contract, whether it's with government or a private client, there will be a clause in your contract that says that should a director or the company be listed, or a court of law takes a judgment against them, the other party that's concluded a contract with that small business or that director reserves the right to cancel that contract. And if the small business or that director is not in a position to reverse that judgment within a certain period, then that contract can be cancelled. And this is the most dangerous thing, because you would be performing well in your contract, but you just have this problem about judgments. And this is mainly caused by the fact that you ignore signs that there is a potential litigation. And the other thing that we covered initially was around the dispute resolution in contracts. It's the most important thing. If you agree in a way of resolving disputes in a contract, you can't change later and say, you know what, I can't afford arbitration, I want to go to court. So it's very, very important that the first thing that you look at when you sign a contract, you need to check if we have a problem, where are we going to resolve our disputes? And mainly I have suggested mediation as the first point. So there is an act that is called the Consumer Protection Act. So this act came as a result of the state trying to alleviate some of the consumer issues that we had. And unfortunately with it, or fortunately with it, they did not ring fence whether it will apply to big corporates or it will apply to small businesses. And unfortunately, that is the problem with regulation in South Africa, is that they never ring fence who must comply with legislation. Everyone, whether you are a business that turns over 50 rands or a business that turns over 50 billion, this legislation will affect you. So how we found out that entrepreneurs, are affected severely by the laws that are linked to consumers is that they would sell products to consumers, and they will not issue quotations with terms and conditions that say, if you don't return it within 7 days, for instance, I will assume that you've accepted the order and things like that. So we experienced that they've got setbacks because customers are now becoming wiser. They're actually returning goods. And because of the Consumer Protection Act, there is now liability around defective goods. So it has affected SMEs in terms of them losing revenue, because now they've got to keep the deposits. For instance, where someone labours, you have to keep the deposit in an interest-bearing account. That's what the legislation says now. And when somebody cancels that order, you need to refund them and mainly take a reasonable amount. So all these things have become a burden for small businesses, because whilst they are supposed to comply, but they are operating from costs that are so thin that they are not able to be refunding everyone, which is why we are proposing a more proactive way instead of a more reactive way for SMEs. So for instance, if you sell a watch, or if you're selling tires, for instance, and the consumer comes back 5 days later and say, the tire that you sold me, actually, I've experienced some problems with it. You have to inspect it, you have to check it, and you have to refund if they need a refund. And most SMEs don't really afford that. What we have found to be working is that when you issue a quote for your clients, you just need to put your terms in advance. And I know there's an industry that's affected by this, and these are designers. Customers would come with a picture from Bona magazine and say, this is what I want. And the designers don't issue terms and conditions to say, if you've changed it 3 times, I can no longer change it. So they spend so much time trying to fit into the consumer's demands, whilst they could actually write up their terms and conditions compliant with the Consumer Protection Act and try and satisfy their customers. So these have been some of the things that we saw exposure of small businesses, and it's as a result, of course, of what I think is overregulation at times. And it's my view that some of the regulation usually should be ring-fenced. And the last thing is that SMEs can also be consumers, can also be viewed as consumers in certain instances. So don't forget that status that you can always have. So when a consumer, when an SME is turning over less than 2 million, which is the current threshold that the minister has now placed, and they are dealing with a corporate, for instance, let's say macro, and you're turning over less than 2 million, in certain instances where you've concluded a contract with a big corporate, the Consumer Protection Act becomes applicable because you are turning over less than 2 million, and in that transaction, you are viewed as a consumer. So I think then that will be, the things that I would like SMEs to ponder on and see how they can mitigate their risks around that, and specifically refrain from doing handshakes when they do business. So do not then miss our next masterclass, which is going to be more detailed in terms of what we have unpacked in principle today. In the masterclass, we're going to be dealing with the critical clauses in detail, and we will be taking practical examples and questions, and we will be holding consultations because we're giving free consultations for our attendees, and this is happening on the 30th. It's going to be online. If you register for that, you actually get a copy of our legal guide, which costs 350, but if you attend the masterclass next week, it's free.
So Bongi, just encouraging everybody to feel free to take a screenshot. So again, if you are on your phone or if you are on your laptop or your tablet, just quickly take a screenshot so that you have this information after the fact. And again, as we kind of take Q&A, maybe we can also kind of put up the information, but there will absolutely be a follow-on mail that will come through to everybody, hopefully by Monday or Tuesday next week, that you can rewatch, not only rewatch this, but all the information that has been offered will also be available, okay? And again, one more then, Yoli.
All right, so thank you very much then. If you want to reach us, we've got a dedicated SME email, which is sme@sikunyanainc.co.za. And Vu, are we having a Q&A shortly?
We're gonna, after the slide, yes.
Yes, okay. So you can WhatsApp us on that number, take a screenshot, and visit our website. This masterclass is available on our Facebook page, which is Sikunyana Incorporated, if you search it on Facebook.
Great stuff. Thanks, Yoli. Again, we're at that stage of the game, everybody. We're gonna open up the platform for questions. Now, again, the rules for opening up questions are quite easy. If you know if you've been on a few Zoom calls, there is a way of raising your hands. So again, there's some descriptions there. So if you're on your desktop, you can see raise your hands next to your name. So if you click participants and you find your name, you'll be able to raise your hand. If you're on your phone, it's slightly below the chat options. So again, just click there and you raise your hands. So I'm happy to recognize those of you who raise their hands to ask questions so that you can direct your questions at Yolelwa. Yeah, so the platform's open for questions, and remember to switch on your mic to speak so that we can hear you as well. So let's not forget that. Yoli, for me, the first one, I think I've just got a general kind of question that I'd like to address from a principles point of view, okay? I know you've kind of unpacked the very kind of legalese and technical context of contracts. What I want you to maybe speak to now empathetically is, again, you can use a relatable example or something, but why are contracts really that important? Why is it that it's always the people who have the contracts that always win? So what has been, again, speak principally around, even anecdotally around some of the scenarios that you've been on, where really the contract would have basically solved the problem. But because the contract was so not done, the person who had the contract on their side basically got the benefit. So why is that so important for everybody to remember?
Okay, so when we do business, we are literally investing. So contracts are a tool to protect that investment. And another thing, they serve as proof, and they serve as certainty of what's going to happen tomorrow and what's going to happen if tomorrow the parties fight or they are no longer there. If one of the parties die, for instance, what will happen? So the certainty is the most important thing, and the protection of the investment. Because the courts, when there's a dispute, they are highly unlikely to go and view the law or interpret the law. They will interpret the contract that people have signed. So people, when there are disputes, they are usually saved by the fact that they concluded contracts and there's no uncertainty about handshaking, who said what, who was gonna do what, by when.
Cool. I'm noting one question. Sagaran, you've raised your hand. Please remember to switch on your mic to speak. And
Yes,
Loni, I've noted you next. Go ahead.
can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Go ahead, Sagan.
Okay. Look, I'm a businessman, SME, for 27 years now. I started in 93. And I've noticed that whatever talks we go to, and please don't think that I'm being negative. I'm trying to get the right answers. We never hear about the nuts and bolts to teach the people that get into business. Because it's you only have, in my whole career, I've only had one legal problem, and luckily my son is a lawyer and we solved it. But the question is, it's more to do with dealing with corporates. I'm at the moment have 2 contracts with corporates, and it's absolutely disgusting that corporates have the audacity to give SMEs to sign contracts that are so bad written. I refuse to sign it, and one I've canceled, and the one I have to sign by tomorrow, otherwise I lose the contract. And I'm saying, you have, sorry?
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, in the sense that you will be doing X, Y, Z, but they'll bring in a whole lot of obligation.
We've all been there. That's why there's a point in my life I decided I need to have a team as well. And I mean, the starting point was hiring Yolelwa, but I want to let you finish so that she can respond to your question. Go ahead.
Okay, so I thought that if I'm going to sign the document tomorrow, I'm going to put not applicable, and then sign it. Would that be legal?
Yoli, over to you. I think there's 2 parts to that question. So there's the frustration with dealing with corporates, and obviously how contracts negotiations need to be handled. And then obviously the one where not applicable, is it illegal? Go ahead, dude.
That's right. So the principle of concluding contracts, and I will come to the frustration because we have dealt with corporates and in trying to teach them that when you conclude a contract with an SME, it's not the same as concluding a contract with a same counterpart. So the principle around contracts is consensus. What we call consensus is the meeting of the minds. So from exactly what you are saying is that when you say it's not applicable, to me already, it's telling me there's no consensus around that particular provision. And when there is no consensus, no contract can come to life. And this is the underlying substantive law that when we practice and when business is done, people forget that there is substantive law underlying contracts. As soon as someone says not applicable, there is no agreement. Now, the question is that legal? One, yes, it is legal to say it's not applicable to you because you don't agree. The responsibility of the corporate is to come back to you and engage you so that you can reach consensus into the material aspects of the contract. The frustration part is that we have been advocating for SMEs to say that the SMEs have been bullied for a long time. Now we're saying SMEs should be proactive. Where they do not agree, we encourage them to take that document to somebody who understands contracts, and they can change those provisions. And like I said, the Consumer Protection Act in a business that turns over less than 2 million is applicable. And the amongst other critical provisions in the CPA, one of them is that if the language or the terms are so unfair to the extent that they render the contract imbalanced, then that contract might as well be null and void.
Yeah, I think in my case, the wording in the contract is a general wording. For example, they're giving you to pick up bins in the area, but they're talking about you must clean the lawns as well. You know, like I'm just giving you an example. What we wanted to do originally is there, but it's flooded with a whole lot of things that don't concern us. So it's not that I'm saying not applicable in the sense that I don't agree with you. It's not applicable to my contract, but you want me to sign.
I will share something with you shortly and quickly. We once did a workshop that was hosted by one of the big corporates for their SMEs. And we picked up in a certain clause, it's a standard agreement, that's usually what they do. they issue standard agreements. They don't look at what is applicable or not.
Okay.
Then we saw that, yes, we realized that there is a clause in those agreements that says everyone must have a public liability insurance. And I questioned this. I said, why? If a mama from Khula who is selling fat cakes, why must he have a public liability insurance? Where is she gonna get the money? So then when we engaged the corporate, they said, oh, yeah, it's a standard clause, but you know, it's negotiable. And we started reviewing those contracts and take out those clauses that are not applicable to everyone. So in your case, I suspect it's a standard agreement. It has not been reviewed. So it would be good for you to say not applicable. I'll agree fully because you are therefore not agreeing. There is no consensus in that.
Yeah, I think you brought up a very good subject. For example, when you're saying that value, I had an opportunity once where the person from also a very big shipping company and very big in the world kept on insisting that I must have an X amount of value for what we call JIT in the transport industry. And I said to her, if you pack gold in my truck and weigh it, it still will not become that. I'm not carrying gold. Why do you insist on this? Oh no, this is a standard arrangement. I couldn't get through to anyone to make them understand that that is okay if you take a 35-tonner truck and say, I want JIT for that amount. But if you take a half-tonner vehicle, how can it be the same? It's impossible. So we have a problem that what I'm suggesting, and maybe this is, we've been living, we actually came past 90, and I'm not being political here, please don't get me wrong. I'm saying at 93, there's a door that opened for us, right? And we walk through this door and we're so passionate about ourselves and our jobs that we go through this and we try to make things work. And I've tried, and I'm really at the stage now that I've been 52 years in this business.
Yeah. So Darren, I think that's an amazing share. But, and again, I think this is a thing, and I mean, I think picking up on your point, you know, one of the things that didn't get handed over during the transition and the opportunities that were there was how to go about doing business. I know from a personal point of view, it's taken me 15 years to figure out some of the things that, yeah, I probably should have figured out a lot earlier, but without a reference point, without a process. And this is why even these platforms are there. It's a peer learning opportunity for all of us. Sometimes the most simplest things that seem like they're in front of us are there, but because nobody says it, no one says, but you know, there's nothing wrong with that. And again, this is a beauty of what we've done with Yolelwa is to convince even them in their profession to stop having, you know, they've got a bad rap, lawyers, that, hey, Johannes wants to talk to a lawyer. Lawyers are too expensive. And we've challenged the legal fraternity, like people like Yolelwa, to say, come forward, let's take hands. Let's make the model work where you can have a different model for how you advise SMEs, at least on legal opinions, on contracts, on these type of things. So again, when you start with those of you on the call who want to engage Yolelwa, you'll be surprised by the pricing model, by the affordability, by the structure. Again, that makes you literally are able to now purchase your services at a reasonable rate without, you know, all sorts of things. So again, what I would encourage you to do is, again, many of you, reach out to Yolelwa after the call. The purpose of this call is not to help you do business over the call. There are other people, Lonnie, I've noted you, but just take that conversation further. But for everybody, remember, you know, if you don't have someone like a Yolelwa in your corner, get someone at least there and certify. So when you've got a contract, like she said earlier, it might be, for her to review your contract might be, you know, 1,000 Rand. But the value of that 1,000 Rand in a 10 million Rand contract means that you don't get a situation where you get screwed on 10 million Rands, okay? And suddenly, the value of that 1,000 suddenly seems cheap when it's time to litigate, okay? So for me, remember and be mindful and very conscious and intentional with these things. You don't need to go through another 20 years to just know these basic elements, but obviously reach out to Yolelwa. I want to kind of move on to Lonnie. Lonnie, remember to switch on your mic, but go ahead, you've got the floor.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Hi, Yolelwa, maybe you could assist me. I'm looking for a legal opinion During the course of, I think it was in 2018, I subcontracted in a company that was doing work for the public works. So the company was awarded a tender to implement a job within one of the hospitals in the Eastern Cape. I therefore became a subcontractor of that company that was awarded a tender. During the course of the implementation and the works that were taking place, everything went smooth. I was told by the company that due to the fact that my skills were limited and there was a hurry with the job that needed to be completed, and then we were running behind deadlines, I was introduced to a specialist who was suggested by the main contractor that I was subcontracted to. So what I did in the interim, I signed a contract of agreement with this specialist that we will work together, where I'll learn, but they'll be doing most of the jobs while I'm still there on site as well. Firstly, when it came to payment, I was supposed to pay the specialist company. But what has happened is that the main contractor paid them directly without consulting me. And then they paid me as well. All right. Nearing the completion of the whole project, Yolelwa, what has happened is that the specialist was paid their full amount of money. I wasn't paid my money. And I had a gripe with them. And then I had to call the Department of Health, call the Department of Public Works, and ask them, how so that I've not been paid, but I've completed the work that I applied for, that I tendered for from the subcontractor? The Department of Health and Department of Public Works told me that, look, we don't have a contract with you. The contract we have is with the main contractor, that you are a subcontractor. So deal with them.
Yep. We've all been there, brother. So
Right.
Yeah, do you want to have? I want to let you finish your question so that Yolelwa can respond, but we know the story. Go ahead.
So basically, I would like to know and hear from Yolelwa, what rights and recourse do I have with these people? Because now this has been going on for almost 2 years, and I understand where the Department of Public Works and the Department of Health are coming from. They're telling me, look, we don't have anything to do with you. We don't even know you from above. So they've given me all the payments that they've sent to the main contractor. I've also sent them my invoices that I've sent to the main contractor, but they cannot get involved. So I'd like to know.
So makes sense.
I'm listening, ma'am.
I was saying it makes sense, your question. You know, because I think it's a dilemma for many SMEs. You remember when I started, I said contracts, in principle, they bind people who have signed them, right? So if you signed a subcontracting agreement, it binds you and the main contractor, right?
All right.
So the principal client has got no relation with you, as they correctly said to you. Now, where is the secret? When you conclude a subcontracting agreement, stay away from a clause that says you will be paid when the main contractor pays. Because the whole point about being a subcontractor is that you are a smaller guy, right?
Yeah.
You are not the bigger guy, therefore you need more cash flow than the main contractor that has received 18 million. Maybe your portion is to put tiles, you know, in a massive hospital. They are building the whole thing. Now imagine if you tie your payment to the main contractor's payment, which you don't know. Sometimes they've received deposits, they won't tell you. How would you know that the main client has paid? You secure those interests via the contract, where in your contract it is categorically stated that you're going to be paid on 30 days, no matter what the main client has done. It's got nothing to do with you, because remember, in dark days, you're going to be alone. Then the main client is not going to be with you to say, oh, this was our project, they should have paid you. They're not going to fight for you. So that is the secret around subcontracting agreements, is to try and detach them as much as possible from the main client. And that's why they're called subcontracting agreements. And the main issue around that is that you will never be able to know if the main client paid, because there is a non-circumvention clause usually in the subcontracting agreements that prevents you from contacting the main client directly. So to come to the last part of your question around the recourse would be that we need to see your contract, the invoice is sent. Fortunately, if that time, 3 years has not lapsed, you still have a chance to issue summons to secure that claim. But if 3 years has lapsed, that claim would have prescribed. So if it's 2 years already, you are running less with a few months. So you've got to issue summons before the period of 3 years.
All right. No, thanks. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, Loni, all I can tell you, my brother, is you need to talk to, or even your situation now, to shorten the process. I mean, again, I'm not a lawyer, but you can talk to Yolelwa, like letters of demand. I mean, there's a civil case that I think is there. You're limited by options, but what options there are, you're gonna need to discuss with the lawyers to go. And there's many ways, guys, I think we can negotiate with lawyers, in the sense that depending on the probability of success, they can be negotiable around how you pay and how you service your fee based on how they appear. Do you maybe want to address that, Yolelwa? But you don't have to give all the secrets away, but how sometimes SMEs are able to get your commitment besides obviously paying the big commitment financially. What is the best approach for SMEs to be able to kind of discuss with you? Like, for example, a case like this, is it, again, is a small retainer, but, there's a percentage on the final settlement. What would you kind of, if Loni came off the street and spoke to you, what would you like to receive from him to give you a sense of confidence that, again, you can work on his case without losing an arm and leg, or without him? What intimidates SMEs a lot is they're already immediately thinking, oh, this is going to cost me too much. And they try to then rationalize and reason. Yet the reality is that person's already moved on with their life. You're the one who's having a pity party by yourself. And I know you're a big social justice advocate in your personal capacity, but how would you like SMEs to approach you when they come with these kind of situations?
So the good thing about our firm is that it was established mainly to make the difference in the SME space. So we use various methodologies to actually price for SMEs, including issues where we would review the merits of the case and conclude certain agreements with the SME in respect of how they could pay their fees based on their merits. And from what I understand from Loni's case is that, of course, he has done the work. One of the easiest cases in South Africa is when services have been rendered. Courts are very irritated where services have been rendered and people don't want to pay. They don't waste time with those cases. So the earlier SMEs act and approach us, to have alternatives, the better. And I think you saw in the beginning, there's a lady, Lauren, that introduced herself. They work with a lot of SMEs, and we support their SMEs in collecting outstanding monies. And they play a very big role in supporting those SMEs in terms of collection. So in that area, when it comes to SMEs, we specialize mainly by representing underdogs. So our options in terms of payments are very flexible for entrepreneurs.
Thanks. Again, so I'm gonna give a last chance for questions. Bongi, did you ever answer your question that you initially raised? I'm not sure. I don't recall that she did.
Yeah, I think she addressed it in her presentation, and I'm glad she expounded on some of the things that we definitely see when we as SM Tax are helping, for example, an SME on tax compliance. They often also then, are wanting legal services. So I'm just grateful that our entrepreneurs have this opportunity to liaise with her. But I'm answered. Thank you.
Great. So one last opportunity for a question for anybody. I'm just trying to think if and in terms of kind of BE matters, Yolelwa, BE matters and situations of fronting. You know, what are your thoughts on those? I mean, do you typically, how do you advise people who are in BE transactions?
Yeah, that is my favorite subject, Vu, because at the commission they know me, because I put pressure on them. Remember, the commission was established. The issue of transformation is a serious issue. It's not an issue that should be taken lightly, but unfortunately, the commission seems not to have capacity to look into these issues. We've got a lot of disputes that the commission has actually passed their time. According to the Act, the commission needs to make a ruling within 1 year. If they don't make a ruling within 1 year, then they don't have the powers to do that. So most SMEs, here is a downfall. They go into BE transactions. Yes, you're gonna get this, you're gonna get that. But what is transformation? Transformation is you owning. When they sell those shares to you, what say do you have in the company? And when you dispose of those shares, how much are you going to get? So most of the time, SMEs go into BE transactions merely to collect operational costs that they may receive through supplier agreements, supplier benefits agreements, not necessarily transformation contracts. So what eventually happens is that they then realize that they do not have a say, or they do not have power to run the business that they are major shareholders of. Then they now declare a dispute. Unfortunately, then in those transactions, the commission has jurisdiction to actually investigate those matters. But once the SME withdraws the complaint, for instance, then the BE commission takes the matter into their own hands and they investigate, but they no longer listen to the SME. So my advice around BE transactions is that as soon as there is a company that you are talking to around transformation and you taking shares of that company, please consult as soon as possible. Do not wait until you have been given an agreement. There is a case that is famous now in the news around the AXA contract. That case went to court, and the court said, look, this is fronting, because when they sold the shares, on disposal of the shares, they were supposed to sell them for 1 rand. You know, a company that's worth billions, when you leave, can they say your 51% shares actually equals to 51 rands? So those are the things that are very, very important. How are you going? Some of them are restricting entrepreneurs in terms of running their businesses, but at the same time, when eventually they leave, they're going to get 51 rands.
Brilliant. I want to give you quickly a minute to Laura just to speak to again to the work that her organization has had with you, Yoli. So please switch on your mic and just kind of share those experiences, Lauren, quickly, and just quickly tell us where you're from.
Hi, yes, thank you very much. I'm from an organization called AIF Business Development. We're a not-for-profit organization that supports small businesses. And, you know, we often find SMEs in legal predicaments. And as Yolelwa has mentioned, often sometimes when it seems like it's too late. And all I can say is that the money spent on legal fees is definitely well worth it in the end, when, you know, especially in terms of letters of demand, when clients realize that SMEs actually can't be bullied, you know. So yeah, I agree with the statement that Yolelwa started off with, where she said, you know, spend the 10,000, rather be proactive rather than reactive. And yeah, all I can say is that you would want someone like this on your side if you ever do, you know, approach those situations.
Thanks, Lauren. Thanks for that testimony. And again, guys, look, there's only so much we can do to encourage people. And again, as is the principle with these sessions, we're not going to ask Yolelwa to come back to speak for free again. The next time you get the opportunity to engage with Yolelwa, you'll probably have to be paying, unless she's doing her own sessions in her own business. But certainly, as a platform of Khula Growth Club, we won't be asking her back to be giving this valuable insights and this invaluable information freely to our audience. The recording of this session will obviously be available on YouTube, on the SMTax YouTube channel, as well as on the SMTax Facebook page. So you can still catch up with these sessions, and we're going to try and work on with these videos and segment some of the deep insights that Yolelwa has taken the time to share with us this evening. In terms of what comes next with these sessions, you can look forward to Women's Month. Thank you to all the ladies who've taken the time to join us. A lot of the emphasis and focus next month is going to be on women, in the sense that our presenters, actually, interestingly, all our presenters this month actually were women, coincidentally. But again, we're going to have, having women's presenters and professional knowledge people sharing their knowledge with us. But we're also working with Bawasa, and again, details of that will be shared with you in our future emails and engagements. So we encourage you to also participate. There will be a separate program with the Businesswomen Association of South Africa that again will be available to the community to attend. But these Khula Growth sessions themselves will continue. So the next session will be on the 13th of August. And again, we will announce that program. There's been a lot of requests that have come through the surveys related to marketing. So we're probably going to focus some of our attention on marketing. So again, those will come through. If you have recommendations, you have suggestions, this is a platform that again, ultimately we're curating and creating for everybody that's doing business in South Africa, regardless of black or white or stage of business or anything, region, location. These sessions are absolutely there for you to find and growth and be very kind of particularly supported. It is an entrepreneurial kind of engagement platform. So thanks to everybody who took the time to write their names and their companies on the chat box boldly and bravely, and it's good to see the names. So again, there is still 2 more minutes left that you can still put your name and your company name if you think there's value in there for you. But I still have 2 more slides to go. If they can come up, I don't know if they can. I'm not sure if my system is updating. But basically, the 2 slides is remember to assist us by completing our request for our request for our survey. Let me just check where I am here. So please remember to complete our survey, just to help us make sure that we shape these presentations accordingly, and so that we can continue to improve the quality of these presentations and improve the quality of the impact for your business. So as we kind of look to wrap up, I think that's on slide 6. So again, there's a URL. Remember, it's case sensitive. So just take a screenshot, go there. It's 3 minutes, guys, ladies and gents. It's 3 minutes for you to help us with the particular survey. And we've already had quite a number of you already helping us. So we're also grateful to those of you who've already participated in giving us your information. But also, just in case, as we close off the evening, I want to say thank you to Yolelwa for taking the time. I know yours have been wanting to do this. We have a lot of exciting things related to legal and Yolelwa in the future, what we're going to be doing as a collaboration with Yolelwa on this platform. So look out for updates. I know we're going to be working on a few things with her going forward. I don't wanna say anything now until we can officially in a position to announce. I know that Yolelwa and Bongi are also chatting, so thanks again also to you, Bongi, to Khula and the SMTax team for supporting these initiatives. All of you have families to get to. This platform is there for you. If you need to ask any questions or send any queries, remember to send them through to webinars@smtax.co.za. Take a screenshot of Yolelwa's details. A lot of you need it, so please remember to take a screenshot and just have a chat. Again, Yoli, are you doing any virtual coffee chats? 30 minutes, Nyana.
Yeah. So we
Okay.
do those live on Facebook. I will share
Awesome.
with you when we do. We simply give entrepreneurs a 30 minutes free engagement.
Awesome. So please look out for Sikunyana or Yolelwa on Facebook and reach out to her. You will not regret it, guys. I promise you that. So the intention here is not to sell anything to anybody. Is to kind of share the context of why certain services are important. Again, I want to go back to the fact that, you know, over time, none of us necessarily have come from families. We either first or second generation entrepreneurs. And the idea is to how do we put in those skill sets that you otherwise wouldn't have grown up with, so that you have the capacity as an entrepreneur to run a fully fledged professional business. And we do that by peer knowledge sharing and just insight sharing and thought leadership. So again, hopefully you've enjoyed the session. Some of you have to go cook, some of you have to go eat your wife's dinner. So thank you very much for taking the time for joining us. And I wish you well in your continued success in your business. Good night, everybody.